I warned my wife, don't humiliate me at this gala. She laughed and gave her lover the award I was meant to receive. As I walked out, her phone rang. It was her boss, sobbing, "The board just called. Your nomination." God, what have you done? The morning light came through our bedroom window like an accusation, sharp and unforgiving, cutting across the white sheets in precise geometric lines. I stood at the closet running my fingers over the fabric of my tuxedo, the one I'd had custom made for tonight, the one that had cost more than our first car together, the one that suddenly felt like a costume for a role I no longer wanted to play. You're overthinking it, Sarah said from the bed, not looking up from her phone. She'd been on that phone for 3 months straight, it seemed, always typing, always smiling at the screen in a way she hadn't smiled at me in years. It's just a gala. You've been to 100 of them. I turned to face her. This woman I'd loved for 15 years, this stranger who now occupied the space where my wife used to be. Her dark hair fell across her face, hiding her eyes, hiding whatever truth lived there now. The morning light loved her the way it accused me. She glowed in it, radiant and untouchable, like something behind museum glass. Sarah, I said, and my voice came out quieter than I intended, softer, almost pleading. I hated the sound of it. This one matters. You know it matters. She finally looked up, and I saw something flicker across her face. Irritation, contempt. It was gone before I could name it, replaced by that practiced smile she wore to board meetings, that professional mask that had somehow become her default expression even at home. Of course it matters, Marcus. Your big night, the Pioneer Award, recognition for your groundbreaking work on sustainable urban infrastructure. She recited it like she was reading from a press release, each word perfectly pronounced and utterly hollow. I'll be there. I'll clap in all the right places. I'll smile for the cameras. What more do you want? What more did I want? The question hung in the air between us like smoke, like the ghost of something burning that neither of us wanted to acknowledge. I wanted her to care. I wanted her to see me the way she used to. Back when I was still Marcus Chen the dreamer, not just Marcus Chen the engineer with the impressive portfolio and the corner office and the growing suspicion that his wife was fucking her colleague. I want you to not humiliate me, I said finally, and the words tasted like ash in my mouth. That's all I'm asking. Just for one night, I want you to remember that we're a team, that we're married, that what I've built, I built for us. She set her phone down on the nightstand, a deliberate gesture, theatrical almost. When she looked at me again, her green eyes were cold, calculating. I'd seen that look before. She used it on opposing counsel, on witnesses she was about to eviscerate, on anyone who stood between her and what she wanted. Are you accusing me of something, Marcus? The question was a trap, beautifully constructed, elegantly simple. If I said yes, I'd be the paranoid husband, the insecure man who couldn't handle his successful wife. If I said no, I'd be giving her permission to continue whatever this was, this slow dissolution of everything we'd built together. I'm asking you to respect me, I said instead. At the gala, in front of my colleagues, my clients, the people I've worked with for a decade. I'm asking you to be my wife, not his. I hadn't meant to say it. The word his, it escaped like a prisoner, like something I'd been keeping locked away in the basement of my mind, and now it was out there, visible, undeniable. Sarah's face went very still. Then she laughed. It wasn't a cruel laugh, not exactly. It was worse than that. It was dismissive, the kind of laugh you'd give a child who'd said something adorably naive, who hadn't yet learned how the world really worked. You're being ridiculous, and she said, standing up, pulling on her silk robe, the one I'd bought her for Christmas, the one that cost $800 and smelled like her perfume, like lies, like everything I was losing. There is no his. There's my work, Marcus. There's my career. There's the partnership track I've been killing myself to stay on while you've been building your little bridges and feeling sorry for yourself. Little bridges. She'd called them little bridges. The Riverwalk project that had taken 5 years to complete, that had won international awards, that had changed the face of the city's waterfront and created a model for sustainable infrastructure that was being studied in universities across 3 continents. She'd called it a little bridge. I felt something shift inside me then, something fundamental, like the first crack in a dam that's been holding back years of pressure. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, holding my tuxedo, watching this woman who wore my ring and shared my bed and had apparently decided that my life's work was decorative, insignificant, worthy of dismissal. I'll see you tonight, she said, walking past me toward the bathroom. Try to enjoy your moment, Marcus. You've earned it. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and I was alone with the morning light and my expensive tuxedo and the growing certainty that tonight, at the gala, something was going to break. I just didn't know yet that I was going to be the one to break it. The office was quiet when I arrived, and that particular kind of early morning silence that exists in corporate buildings before the machinery of ambition cranks into motion. I liked this time, had always liked it. The sense of being alone with the work, with the blueprints and the calculations and the dreams made concrete. My office was on the 43rd floor, with windows that looked out over the city I'd helped reshape. From here, I could see the Riverwalk, the elegant curve of steel and glass that married the waterfront to the downtown core, that had solved problems everyone said were unsolvable. I'd spent 5 years of my life on that project. 5 years of 18-hour days and sleepless nights and arguments with contractors and city planners and my wife who'd complained that I was never home, that I loved my work more than I loved her. Maybe she'd been right, or maybe she'd been looking for an excuse. I set my coffee down on the desk, black, no sugar, the same way I'd been drinking it for 15 years, and opened my laptop. I had work to do before the gala, final reviews on the Thompson Tower proposal, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept circling back to Sarah, to the way she'd looked at me this morning, to that laugh that had felt like a dismissal of our entire marriage. My phone buzzed. A text from David Wu, my business partner and the only person at the firm who'd known me since before I was successful, when I was just an immigrant kid with good grades and bigger dreams. You ready for tonight? Going to be wild. Don't let Sarah steal your thunder. I stared at the message, at that casual mention of Sarah stealing my thunder, and wondered what David knew, what everyone knew, whether I'd been the only one blind to what was happening, so focused on my work that I'd missed the obvious signs that my marriage was ending. Another buzz. This time from Claire Martinez, the firm's operations director and the person who knew where all the bodies were buried, metaphorically speaking. Claire had been with us for 8 years, had organized everything from corporate retreats to client dinners, and had a particular talent for noticing things other people missed. Need to talk before tonight. It's important. Can you meet me at the corner cafe at 8? I checked my watch, 7:15. I had time. The cafe was a 10-minute walk from the office, one of those places that survived on the patronage of professionals who needed caffeine and conversation before facing their day. Claire was already there when I arrived, sitting in a back booth, 2 coffee cups in front of her. She looked up as I approached, and I saw something in her face that made my stomach tighten. Pity. She was looking at me with pity. Marcus, she said, sliding one of the coffee cups toward me. Sit down. I sat. I debated whether to show you this, she said, pulling out her phone. I debated for 3 weeks, actually, but tonight's the gala, and you deserve to know before you go up on that stage. My hands were steady as I took the phone, but something inside me was already shaking, already preparing for impact. The screen showed a photo, taken at what looked like a hotel bar. Sarah was there, sitting close, too close to a man I recognized. James Whitmore, senior partner at her firm. Married, father of 3, the man she'd been mentioning in conversation for the past 6 months, always casually, always in the context of work. Scroll, Claire said quietly. I scrolled, more photos, different locations, different dates. Sarah and James at a restaurant, sharing dessert. Sarah and James leaving a hotel together, his hand on her lower back. Sarah and James at what looked like a conference, standing too close, her face tilted up toward his in a way that was unmistakably intimate. There's more, Claire said, and her voice was gentle, careful, like she was talking to someone standing on a ledge. The hotel he's going into in that last photo? I called them. They have a room booked under Whitmore. Standing reservation, twice a week for the past 4 months, Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. The days Sarah had said she had late meetings with clients. The days she'd come home smelling like different perfume, her hair freshly styled, her whole energy different, guilty and defiant at once. Why are you showing me this? I asked, and my voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. Because tonight you're getting the Pioneer Award, Claire said. And Sarah is on the selection committee for the firm's new Partner Incentive Award. And I heard from a friend who works in their HR department that she's been pushing hard to get James nominated for it. They're announcing it at the gala, Marcus. Same night as your award. The cafe seemed to tilt slightly, the world rearranging itself around this new information. Sarah wasn't just having an affair. She was planning to celebrate it publicly on what was supposed to be my night. She was going to stand there and give her lover an award in front of our friends and colleagues and everyone who thought we had a good marriage, a successful partnership. I need copies of these, I said, handing the phone back to Claire. All of them. And I need you to find out everything you can about James Whitmore. His work history, his finances, anything that might be relevant. Claire nodded, something like relief crossing her face. You're not going to do anything stupid, are you? I smiled, and it felt foreign on my face, like trying on someone else's expression. Define stupid. Marcus, I am going to the gala, I said, standing up. I'm going to accept my award, and I'm going to let Sarah make her choices. But I'm not going to be humiliated, not anymore. I left the cafe and walked back to the office, through streets that suddenly looked different, sharper, more real. The morning light was still harsh, still accusatory, but it wasn't accusing me anymore. It was illuminating everything I'd been too afraid to see. In my office, I opened my laptop and started working. Not on the Thompson Tower proposal. On something else. Something that had been building in the back of my mind for months, ever since I'd first noticed Sarah pulling away. First felt the distance, growing between us like a chasm neither of us wanted to acknowledge. I was an engineer. I solved problems. I built things that lasted. It was time to apply those skills to my marriage, or to what came after it. The afternoon before the gala unfolded in a strange, dreamlike sequence, as if I were watching myself from a distance, seeing Marcus Chen go through the motions of his day while somewhere deep inside, another version of me was calculating, planning, preparing for what came next. I'd always been good at compartmentalization. You had to be, in my profession. You couldn't let the stress of one project bleed into another, couldn't let personal problems interfere with the precision required to build structures that had to withstand earthquakes, hurricanes, the slow erosion of time. I'd built a career on being able to separate emotion from execution. I just hadn't expected to apply those skills to my marriage. Claire sent the files at noon. 47 photographs spanning 6 months. Hotel receipts, credit card statements she'd obtained through methods I didn't ask about and probably didn't want to know. A pattern of behavior so consistent, so deliberate, that it stopped being a question of whether the affair was real and became a question of how brazen they'd been, how little they'd cared about being caught. I saved everything to an encrypted drive, then I made copies of the copies and sent them to 3 different cloud storage accounts. Evidence wasn't worth anything if it could be destroyed, denied, disappeared. I'd learned that watching Sarah prepare for trials, watching her build cases brick by brick until her opponents had nowhere left to hide. At 2 o'clock, David knocked on my office door. You look like hell, he said, which meant I looked the way I felt, like someone who'd spent the night awake, staring at the ceiling, watching his marriage dissolve in real time inside his head. Rough morning, I said. Want to talk about it? I considered telling him. David was my best friend, had been since graduate school, had been the best man at my wedding, and the first person I'd called when Sarah and I had bought our house. But telling him meant making it real, meant admitting out loud that my marriage was ending, and I wasn't ready for that yet. I needed to control the narrative, needed to choose the moment of revelation. Later, I said, after the gala. He studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but Marcus, whatever's going on, you're going to be fine. You're the smartest person I know. You'll figure it out. After he left, I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a small leather box. Inside was a pair of cufflinks, platinum with small diamonds, custom made. I'd ordered them 6 months ago as a gift to myself, a celebration of the Pioneer Awards I'd known I was going to receive. They'd cost more than I wanted to admit, but they were perfect, elegant, understated, exactly the kind of thing Marcus Chen, the successful engineer, would wear to his moment of triumph. I put them back in the drawer. Tonight wasn't about triumph anymore. Tonight was about something else, something I was still defining as the hours ticked past and the gala approached. At 4 o'clock, I left the office early and drove home. The house was empty. Sarah had texted that she'd be getting ready at the hotel, had booked a suite and to do hair and makeup, would meet me at the gala. Translation, she was with James. They were preparing for their big night, the night they'd celebrate his award, the night she'd make her choice public without quite saying it out loud. I stood in our bedroom, looking at the closet that held her clothes and mine, side by side, a visual representation of a partnership that existed only in physical space now. Her side was half empty. She'd taken clothes to the hotel, had already begun the process of separation without acknowledging what she was doing. The tuxedo hung where I'd left it that morning, waiting. I put it on slowly, carefully, each motion deliberate. Shirt perfectly pressed, pants with the subtle break over my shoes, jacket that fit like it had been grown on my body rather than tailored. In the mirror, I looked like success. I looked like a man who had everything figured out. I looked like a lie. At 6 o'clock, my phone rang. Sarah. Hey, you know what she said? And her voice was bright, cheerful, the voice she used when she was happy and didn't want me to know why. Just checking that you're on your way. I'm already at the hotel. The ballroom looks amazing. Marcus, you're gonna love it. I'm sure I will, I said. Sarah, before tonight starts, I need you to understand something. Pause. What? I need you to not humiliate me. That's all I'm asking. Whatever else is happening, whatever you've decided about us, just give me tonight. Let me have this one night. Another pause. Longer this time. When she spoke again, the brightness was gone from her voice, replaced by something colder, more carefully controlled. I don't know what you think is happening, Marcus, but you're being paranoid. I'm your wife. I'll be there supporting you the way I always have. Just try to relax, okay? This is supposed to be a celebration. She hung up before I could respond. I stood there in our bedroom, phone in hand, and felt something inside me settle, solidify. She'd had her chance. I'd given her a warning, an opportunity to choose differently. She'd dismissed it, the way she'd dismissed everything else I'd said for the past 6 months. Whatever happened tonight, I'd given her a choice. She just didn't know she'd already made it. I checked my watch, 6:15. The gala started at 7. I had 45 minutes to drive to the hotel, to walk into that ballroom, to put on the performance of my life. I picked up my phone and made one call, to Claire. It's time, I said. Are you ready? I'm ready, she said. Marcus, are you sure about this? I'm sure, I said, and realized it was true. I was more certain of this than I'd been of anything in years. Let's build something, one last time. I hung up, straightened my tie, and walked out of the house without looking back. The grand ballroom of the Pacific Regency Hotel was everything Sarah had promised. Breathtaking, elegant. The kind of space that made you feel like you'd stepped into someone else's life. Someone richer and more important than you'd ever be. Crystal chandeliers threw light across white tablecloths and gold-rimmed plates. A string quartet played something classical and soothing in the corner. People in evening wear stood in clusters, drinking champagne, laughing at jokes that probably weren't funny but sounded sophisticated. I'd been to 100 events like this. I'd never felt more alone. Marcus! James Rivera, the chairman of the Engineering Council, appeared at my elbow with a glass of champagne and a smile that looked genuine. There he is, man of the hour. How are you feeling? Grateful. I said, which was the truth, or part of it. I was grateful for the award, for the recognition, for the validation that 15 years of work had meant something. I just wished it felt like more. You've earned it, James said, clapping me on the shoulder. The Riverwalk project changed the game, Marcus. You know how many cities are trying to replicate your model? You're going to be teaching courses about this in 10 years. We talked for a few minutes about the project, about the challenges of sustainable infrastructure, about the future of urban development. It was the kind of conversation I usually loved, the kind that made me feel connected to something larger than myself. Tonight, it felt like background noise, like music playing in another room while I waited for the main event to start. Sarah arrived at 7:30, making an entrance the way she always did, like she knew everyone was watching and wanted to give them something worth seeing. She wore a dress I'd never seen before. Deep emerald green that set off her eyes and her hair, cut low in the back, expensive in that way that doesn't announce itself, but makes everything else in the room look cheaper by comparison. She wasn't alone. James Whitmore walked beside her, close but not too close, professional but not quite. He wore a tuxedo similar to mine, but his had an edge of rumpled charm. like he was the kind of man who wore formal wear so often he didn't have to think about it anymore. He was handsome in that conventional way that women's magazines featured: strong jaw, good hair, the kind of smile that promised adventure and reliability in equal measure. They saw me at the same time. Sarah's face did something complicated: surprise, guilt, defiance, all mixing together in an expression that lasted less than a second before being replaced by her professional smile. James just looked uncomfortable, like he'd walked into a room and found his parents arguing. "Marcus," Sarah said, walking over with James trailing behind her like a reluctant shadow. "You look great. Have you met James Whitmore? He's a senior partner at the firm." "We've met," I said, extending my hand. James took it, his grip firm but not aggressive, his eyes not quite meeting mine. "Congratulations on your nomination tonight." James blinked. "How did you—" "Claire mentioned it," I said smoothly. "The Partner Incentive Award, right? Big honor. You must be thrilled." Sarah's smile tightened just slightly, just enough that I knew I'd surprised her. "Yes, well, James has been doing outstanding work on the Meridian merger. He's really transformed how the firm approaches complex acquisitions." "I'm sure he has," I said, and let the silence stretch just long enough to be uncomfortable before adding, "Sarah's been talking about that merger for months. Sounds like you two have been working very closely." "We have," James said, and had the grace to look even more uncomfortable. "Your wife is an exceptional attorney, Marcus. The firm is lucky to have her." "I know exactly how lucky I am," I said, meeting Sarah's eyes. "Don't I, darling?" She held my gaze for a moment, something dangerous flickering behind her professional mask, then smiled that bright, brittle smile she used when she was angry but couldn't show it. "We should find our seats." She tried. I think they're about to start. The ballroom had been arranged with a head table on a raised platform and round tables radiating out from it, like planets orbiting a sun. As one of the award recipients, I was seated at the head table with Sarah to my right and David Wu on my left. James Whitmore was seated 3 tables away, far enough to be respectful, close enough that I could see him watching Sarah when he thought no one was looking. Claire was at a table near the back, her phone in her lap, her eyes meeting mine with a question I answered with the slightest nod. Everything was ready. The lights dimmed. The string quartet fell silent. James Revere stepped up to the podium, his voice amplified by microphones hidden throughout the room. "Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the annual Industry Excellence Gala. Tonight, we celebrate innovation, dedication, and the people who make our industry great. We have several awards to present, but I'd like to start with one of our most prestigious honors, the Pioneer Award, given to an individual whose work has fundamentally changed how we think about engineering and urban development." He talked for a while about the history of the award, about past recipients, about the criteria for selection. I barely heard it. I was watching Sarah, watching her face as she checked her phone under the table, watching her smile at something she read there. A text from James, probably, something private and intimate, that made her look happier than I'd seen her look in months. This year's Pioneer Award goes to Marcus Chen for his groundbreaking work on the Riverwalk project and his innovative approach to sustainable urban infrastructure. Marcus, please come up and accept your award." Applause filled the room, genuine and warm. I stood, buttoning my jacket, and walked to the podium. James Rivera shook my hand and passed me a crystal trophy that caught the light and threw rainbows across the stage. I stood there, looking out at the crowd, at all these people I'd worked with and competed against and respected. And then I looked at Sarah. She was clapping, her smile perfect, her posture perfect, everything about her screaming, supportive wife. But her eyes were distant, already thinking about what came next, already preparing for James's moment. I cleared my throat and leaned into the microphone. "Thank you," I said, and my voice came out steady, calm, exactly the way I'd practiced. "This award means more to me than I can say. The Riverwalk project was 5 years of my life, 5 years of challenges and setbacks and moments when I wasn't sure we'd be able to solve the problems in front of us. But we did, because that's what engineers do. We solve problems. We take something that seems impossible, and we break it down into smaller problems, and we solve those, one by one, until the impossible becomes real." I paused, letting the words settle. I've learned a lot from that project, about persistence, about integrity, about the importance of building things that last, that can withstand pressure and stress and time. about the difference between something that looks beautiful and something that's structurally sound. Sometimes they're the same thing, sometimes they're not. I could feel Sarah stiffening beside me at the head table, could see David looking at me with growing concern, could see Claire at her table in the back, her hand on her phone, ready. I've also learned, I continued, that sometimes the most important thing you can do is recognize when something isn't working, when the foundation is compromised, when continuing to build on a faulty structure will only lead to collapse. The room had gone very quiet. People were starting to sense that this wasn't a standard acceptance speech, that something was happening that fell outside the usual script. So, I want to thank everyone who supported the Riverwalk project, my team who put in countless hours, the city planners who believed in the vision, my business partner, David Wu, who's always had my back. I looked directly at Sarah, and my wife, Sarah Chen, who's been by my side for 15 years, who's always supported my work, who's always been there, even when I didn't know she was there with someone else. The silence that followed was absolute, the kind of silence that feels physical, that presses against your eardrums and makes you aware of your own heartbeat. Sarah's face had gone pale, then red, then pale again. She was standing now, though I hadn't seen her stand, her chair pushed back, her mouth opening to say something, deny, explain, accuse. I didn't give her the chance. Before we move on to the next award, I said, I want to share something with everyone here. Because I think it's important to be honest. I think it's important to acknowledge the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. I pulled out my phone, connected it to the presentation system with a cable I'd given to the AV team earlier, claiming I wanted to show some project photos. The screen behind me flickered to life. The first photograph appeared, Sarah and James at a restaurant, leaning close, intimate. The date stamp in the corner was from 3 months ago. Someone gasped. Sarah made a sound like she'd been punched. These are from a restaurant called Bellissimo, I said conversationally, as if I were giving a technical presentation. Italian place in the Marina district. Excellent ossobuco, apparently. My wife has been going there every Tuesday for the past 4 months. Usually with James Whitmore, who I believe is about to receive an award tonight. The second photo. Sarah and James leaving a hotel, and his hand on her back, the date stamp from 6 weeks ago. The Pacific Heights Hotel, I continued. They have a standing reservation there. Room 512. Tuesdays and Thursdays between 2 and 6 p.m. I called to confirm. The staff was very helpful. More photos cycled through. Different locations, different dates, the same two people, the same intimate gestures, the same betrayal documented in high resolution and perfect focus. Sarah was making her way toward the stage now, her face a mask of fury and panic. Marcus, stop this. Stop this right now. Why? I asked, and my voice was still calm, still steady, still that engineer's voice that solved problems step by step. This is a celebration, isn't it? We're celebrating achievements tonight. I achieved a major infrastructure project. You achieved a 6-month affair with your colleague. Why shouldn't we both be celebrated? You bastard! She hissed, climbing onto the stage. You have no right. I have every right, I said. And now there was heat in my voice. Now there was anger breaking through the professional calm. You were going to stand here tonight and give him an award. You were going to make me watch while you celebrated him in front of everyone we know. You were going to humiliate me. I warned you, Sarah. This morning, I gave you one warning. I asked you not to humiliate me. You laughed. The room was chaos now. People were standing, talking, phones coming out to capture this moment, this spectacular public destruction of a marriage. James Rivera was trying to restore order, but no one was listening. At his table, James Whitmore had gone gray, his hand over his face, his career imploding in real time. Sarah's phone rang. The sound cut through the chaos like a knife, loud and jarring in the sudden pocket of silence that opened around us. She pulled it out of her purse with shaking hands, looked at the screen, and I saw her face change, saw something beyond anger and humiliation register there. Fear. I have to take this, she said, and her voice cracked on the words. She turned away, pressed the phone to her ear. Hello? Yes, this is Sarah Chen. I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but I could watch her face, could see the color draining from it, could see her hand come up to her mouth, could see her start to shake. What? she said. No, no, that's not. When did you? A pause, long and terrible. Oh my God, oh my God. She lowered the phone slowly, like it weighed 100 pounds. When she looked at me, her eyes were wide, shocked, empty of everything but growing horror. That was Margaret, she whispered. The managing partner. The board just held an emergency meeting. Someone sent them evidence that James and I that we've been. She couldn't finish the sentence. They're conducting an investigation. Ethics violations. Conflict of interest on the Meridian merger because we. She stopped talking and just stood there, the phone hanging loose in her hand, as the implications crashed over her like waves. I'd sent the evidence to the board 3 hours ago, along with documentation showing that James Whitmore had been making decisions on the Meridian merger that potentially benefited Sarah's position at the firm, along with hotel receipts that overlapped with days they'd both billed clients for work time, along with everything Claire had found, everything I'd verified, everything that transformed an affair from a personal betrayal into a professional catastrophe. Your nomination for partner, I said quietly, so only she could hear. It's gone, isn't it? They're not going to make you partner now. They're going to investigate. They're going to find all the ways you've compromised your professional judgment. They might even fire you, Sarah. You and James both. You did this, she breathed. You planned this. I warned you, I said again. I gave you one chance. You chose to laugh at me instead. Her phone rang again. She looked at it like it was a snake. You should answer that, I said, picking up my award. The crystal trophy that represented 15 years of work, of building things that lasted. It's probably James. You're going to want to get your stories straight. Engineering tip. Matching stories are like matching blueprints. They only work if they're built on the same foundation. If one of you cracks first, the whole structure comes down. I walked off the stage, through the crowd that parted like water around me, past David, who looked stunned, past Claire, who gave me the smallest nod, past James Whitmore, who was on his own phone now, his face ashen, his wife probably on the other end, asking him to explain what the hell was happening. I walked out of the ballroom, out of the hotel, into the cool San Francisco night where fog was rolling in from the bay, obscuring the city, making everything soft and distant and unreal. Behind me, I could hear Sarah screaming my name, her voice raw and desperate and too late. I kept walking. The morning after the gala, I woke up in a hotel room that wasn't mine, in sheets that smelled like nothing to sunlight that felt different, cleaner, sharper, like it was illuminating a world I'd never seen before. I'd checked into the Fairmont at midnight, after driving around the city for 3 hours, just driving, not thinking, letting my hands on the wheel and my eyes on the road be the only reality I had to manage. I'd passed our house twice and kept going. I wasn't ready to go back there yet. Maybe I never would be. My phone showed 73 missed calls, 30 from Sarah, 20 from numbers I didn't recognize, probably press, probably lawyers, probably people who wanted to ask me questions I wasn't ready to answer, 15 from David, 8 from my mother. I called my mother first. Marcus, she said, and her voice was careful, controlled on the way it got when she was managing strong emotion. I saw the news. Are you all right? I don't know, I said, which was honest. I don't know what all right looks like anymore. Where are you? Hotel. I'm safe. I need some time, Mom. A pause, then, what you did last night, showing those pictures, Marcus, I raised you better than that. That was cruel. She was going to give her lover an award, I said, and heard the flatness in my own voice. In front of everyone I know, in front of my colleagues, my clients, my friends. She was going to celebrate him on my night. Was I supposed to just let that happen? You were supposed to handle it privately, like an adult, like someone who understands that revenge doesn't heal anything. I closed my eyes. My mother was right, of course, and she was always right. But she hadn't been there in that ballroom, hadn't felt what I'd felt watching Sarah check her phone, smile at James's text, prepare to honor him while I stood there, with my worthless trophy. I'm sorry, I said. I'm sorry I disappointed you, but I'm not sorry I did it. I know, she said, and her voice softened. That's what worries me. Marcus, this isn't over. What you started last night, it's going to keep going. There are going to be consequences you haven't thought about yet. Please, just come home. Let's talk this through. I will, I said. Soon, I just need a few days. After I hung up, I ordered room service, coffee, eggs, toast I wouldn't eat, and opened my laptop. The internet had done what the internet does, taken the events of last night and transformed them into content, into commentary, into a narrative that existed separate from the reality I'd lived through. Engineer exposes wife's affair at industry gala, read one headline. Award ceremony becomes public divorce proceeding, read another. There were videos, of course. Someone had recorded the whole thing on their phone, had captured the moment the photos appeared on screen, had caught Sarah's face as she realized what was happening, had documented her climbing onto the stage, my calm recitation of facts, the phone call that had changed everything. The video had 3 million views. People in the comments were choosing sides, building narratives, arguing about whether I was a hero or a villain, whether Sarah deserved what happened, whether public humiliation was ever justified. I closed the laptop before I could read more. David called at noon. Where are you? I'm coming to get you. I'm fine, David. You're not fine. Nobody's fine after doing what you did last night. Tell me where you are. I gave him the address. He arrived 30 minutes later, looking like he hadn't slept, still wearing the tuxedo pants and dress shirt from last night, his bow tie hanging loose around his neck. Jesus, Marcus, he said, standing in the doorway of my hotel room. What the hell were you thinking? I was thinking that I was tired of being the idiot who didn't know his wife was cheating on him, I said. I was thinking that if she was going to humiliate me, I was going to make sure she understood what humiliation actually feels like. David came in, closed the door, sat down on the edge of the bed. You destroyed her, man. Her career, her reputation, everything. Was it worth it? Ask me in a year, I said. Right now, I don't know. The board at her firm is investigating. They're probably going to fire her and Whitmore both. Ethics violations, conflict of interest, billing irregularities. You gave them everything they needed to bury her. Good. Marcus, she made her choices, David. I just made sure those choices had consequences. Isn't that what's supposed to happen? People make choices and those choices matter? He looked at me for a long time, his face cycling through emotions I couldn't quite name. You're my best friend, he said finally. I've known you for 20 years, and I'm telling you right now, as your friend, you need to be careful. What you're feeling right now, this satisfaction, this sense of justice, it's going to wear off. And when it does, you're going to have to live with what you did. I already do, I said. Sarah called while David was still there. I let it go to voicemail. She called again, again. You should talk to her, David said. Why? Because you're still married. Because you're going to have a conversation eventually. Because he stopped, looked away. Because maybe part of her still loves you, Marcus. Maybe part of you still loves her. I thought about that, about love, about whether it was possible to love someone and do what I'd done, to love someone and let them twist in the wind while their career imploded, to love someone and feel this cold satisfaction that they were finally experiencing the pain they'd caused me. I don't think I know what love is anymore, I said. David left after making me promise I'd eat something, sleep, not do anything else dramatic without calling him first. After he was gone, I lay on the hotel bed and stared at the ceiling and tried to feel something beyond the numbness that had settled over me like frost. Sarah's voicemail played automatically when I finally checked my messages. Marcus! Her voice was wrecked, raw from crying, from screaming, from whatever she'd been doing since last night. Marcus, please call me back. I know you're angry. I know you hate me, but please, we need to talk. We need to figure this out. I can't. A sob choked off. The firm put me on administrative leave. They're investigating. They're talking about firing me. James's wife left him. She took the kids. Marcus, this is destroying everything. Please just talk to me. I deleted the message. The next one was shorter. You wanted to hurt me. You succeeded. Are you happy now? The one after that was angry. You had no right to do what you did. That was private. That was our marriage, Marcus, not a goddamn engineering project you could solve with data and public humiliation. I made a mistake. I made a terrible mistake. But what you did, that was calculated. That was cruel. That was... The message cut off. The final message was just breathing. Long, ragged breathing that went on for almost a minute before she spoke. I loved you, she said. I know you don't believe that anymore. I know you think this was all calculated, that I never cared, that I've been planning to leave you all along. But I loved you, Marcus. I still love you. And I'm sorry. I was sorry for all of it. I listened to the message 3 times, trying to find the lie in it, trying to hear the manipulation, the lawyer's skill at saying what people wanted to hear. But all I could hear was pain. I called her back. She answered on the first ring. Marcus, I'm listening, I said. Talk. We met at the house that evening. Neutral territory that was somehow the most hostile space we could have chosen. Every room held memories. The kitchen where we'd cooked together, the living room where we'd argued about paint colors, the bedroom where we'd once been happy before everything got complicated, before success and ambition and the slow erosion of connection had left us strangers living in the same space. Sarah was already there when I arrived, sitting at the dining room table we'd bought together 7 years ago. The one we'd spent 3 hours choosing, because she'd wanted something that looked expensive, and I'd wanted something that would last. We'd compromised on something that was both, the way we'd compromised on everything back then. She looked terrible. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, her face bare of makeup, her eyes swollen and red. She wore yoga pants and an old Stanford sweatshirt, my old Stanford sweatshirt, the one I'd given her when we were dating, and she'd claimed it for her own. Hi, she said, and her voice was small, uncertain, nothing like the confident attorney who dismissed my warnings yesterday morning. Had it only been yesterday? It felt like years had passed, like I'd aged decades in the span of a single day. Hi, I said back, sitting down across from her, maintaining the distance of the table between us. We looked at each other in silence for a moment, two people who'd once known everything about each other and now knew nothing at all. I don't know where to start, she said finally. Start with the truth, I said. Start with when it began. Start with why. She nodded, took a breath that shook on the way in. It started 6 months ago, at a firm retreat. We were both working late, preparing for the Meridian presentation, and we started talking. Just talking at first. About work, about stress, about... She stopped, looked away. About our marriages. About how James felt invisible to his wife. About how I felt invisible to you. I never made you invisible. You didn't see me, Marcus. Not for years. You saw the idea of me. The successful wife who supported your work, who looked good at events, who managed the house and the social calendar and everything else while you built your projects. But you didn't see me. You didn't ask what I wanted and what I needed, whether I was happy. And James did? James listened, she said softly. He paid attention. He made me feel like I mattered, like I was more than just an accessory to someone else's success. So you fucked him. She flinched at the word, the crudeness of it, but didn't deny it. I made a mistake, a terrible, selfish mistake. I was unhappy, and instead of talking to you about it, instead of trying to fix us, I took the easy way out. I found comfort somewhere else. For 6 months. For 6 months, she confirmed. It wasn't planned, Marcus. It wasn't some calculated affair where I was trying to hurt you or leave you. It was escape. From the pressure, from the expectations, from feeling like I was always performing, always being the perfect wife for Marcus Chen, the brilliant engineer. So this is my fault, I said flatly. I'm being blamed for your affair because I made you feel like you had to be perfect. No, she said quickly. No, I'm not blaming you. I'm trying to explain. I'm trying to help you understand why I did what I did, even though there's no excuse for it. You were going to give him an award, I said. Last night, at the gala. You were going to stand up there and celebrate him in front of everyone we know. In front of me. She closed her eyes. I thought I could keep them separate. Work and personal. I thought I could honor his professional achievements without it being about us. She laughed, bitter and broken. I thought you wouldn't notice. Or if you did notice, you wouldn't say anything because you never say anything, Marcus. You just absorb everything and keep working and pretend everything's fine. I warned you, I said, and heard my voice going cold, felt the anger returning, sharp and focused. Yesterday morning, I told you not to humiliate me. You laughed at me. I know, and I'm sorry. I didn't take you seriously. I didn't think you'd... She gestured helplessly. I didn't think you'd destroy my entire life because of it. I didn't destroy your life, Sarah. I just revealed the truth. Everything that's happening to you right now. Every consequence you're facing. You built that. You made those choices. I just made sure people knew about them. By humiliating me publicly, by showing those photos to hundreds of people, by sending evidence to the board that could end my career. Yes, I said simply. By doing all of that, because you were going to humiliate me, and I decided I'd rather be the one controlling the narrative. She stared at me, and I saw something new in her eyes. Not just shame or guilt or anger, but fear of me, of what I'd done, of what I might be capable of. I don't know you, she whispered. I've been married to you for 15 years, and I don't know who you are. The Marcus I married he would never be this cruel. The Sarah I married would never cheat on me for 6 months and then laugh when I asked her not to humiliate me, I shot back. Maybe we're both strangers now. We sat in silence, the weight of that truth settling between us like a third presence at the table. What happens now? Sarah asked finally. Where do we go from here? I don't know, I said honestly. I don't know if there is a we anymore. I don't know if there can be. Do you want there to be? Did I? I thought about it and really thought about it, trying to look past the anger and the hurt and the satisfaction I'd felt watching her face crumble last night, trying to see if there was anything left of what we'd had, anything worth saving. I loved you, I said slowly. I loved you so much. You were my everything, Sarah, my partner, my best friend, the person I built my life around. And you took that and you twisted it into something ugly. You made me into a joke, the husband who didn't know his wife was cheating, the brilliant engineer who couldn't see what was right in front of him. I never thought of you like that, she said, tears streaming down her face now. Marcus, I still love you. I know you don't believe me, but I do. And I want to fix this. I want us to fix this. How? How do we fix this? How do I trust you again? How do I look at you without seeing him, without seeing all those photos, without thinking about you in that hotel room twice a week for 6 months? Therapy, she said desperately. Counseling, time, whatever it takes, Marcus. I'll do whatever it takes. Would you have done that if I hadn't exposed you last night? If I just confronted you privately, asked you to choose, given you the chance to end it quietly? Would you have fought for us then? She opened her mouth, closed it. And in that hesitation, I had my answer. You were going to leave me, I said, and it wasn't a question. Eventually, once the partnership was secure. Once James figured out his situation. You were going to leave me. I don't know, she whispered. I honestly don't know what I was going to do. I was just trying to get through each day without everything falling apart. Well, I said, standing up. Mission failed. Where are you going? I don't know, hotel, David's place. Maybe I'll just drive for a while. I need to not be here right now. Marcus, please. She stood too, reaching for me across the table. Please don't leave like this. We need to talk more. We need to figure out. There's nothing to figure out, I said, pulling away from her hand. You made your choice. I made mine. Now we both live with the consequences. I love you, she said again, desperate, broken. Doesn't that matter? Doesn't that count for something? I looked at her, really looked at her. This woman I'd loved for 15 years, who'd betrayed me for 6 months, who was begging me now to forgive her, to save her from the wreckage of her own choices. It matters, I said quietly, but I don't know if it's enough. I walked out of the house, out to my car, out of the life we'd built together. Behind me, I heard her crying, heard her call my name one more time. I didn't turn around. 3 weeks passed. 21 days that felt like both an eternity and an instant. Time moving in strange ways when your entire life had been upended and you were trying to figure out who you were without the identity you'd worn for 15 years. I stayed at David's place for the first week, sleeping on his couch. Barely sleeping at all, really. Just lying there in the dark while my mind replayed everything, the affair, the gala, Sarah's face when the photos appeared, her voice on those voicemails. David was patient, let me process without pushing, just made sure I ate occasionally and didn't do anything stupid. The second week I moved back to the hotel, the Fairmont where I'd first gone the night of the gala. I got a suite this time, something with more space, with a view of the bay that reminded me why I'd fallen in love with San Francisco in the first place. I worked from there, handling firm business remotely, taking calls with clients who'd seen the news and wanted to make sure their projects wouldn't be affected by my personal situation. Everyone was very polite about it, very professional, but I could hear the curiosity underneath. The questions they wanted to ask, but didn't. Was it true? Had my wife really been cheating? Had I really exposed her affair in front of hundreds of people? What was I thinking? What happened next? I didn't have answers for most of those questions. Claire came to visit me in week 2, bringing files and updates and a level of practical support that made me realize why she was so good at her job. She'd been the one to compile the evidence, to find the patterns, to help me build the case against Sarah and James like we were preparing for trial. "How are you holding up?" she asked, sitting across from me in the hotel suite, coffee from the lobby cafe steaming between us. "I'm functional," I said, which was true. I was showering, eating, working. I was performing the basic tasks of existence. Whether that constituted holding up was debatable. "Have you talked to Sarah?" "She calls every day. I don't answer." "Marcus, what would I say to her, Claire? What conversation is there to have? She cheated. I exposed her. Now we're getting divorced. The rest is just paperwork." "Is it?" Claire asked gently. "Is that really all it is?" I looked out at the bay, at the water glinting in afternoon sun, at the city spread out below us like a circuit board, all those lives intersecting and connecting and breaking apart. "I don't know what it is," I admitted. "I thought I'd feel better after the gala. I thought exposing her would give me closure, would let me move on, but I just feel," I searched for the word, "empty, like I solved the problem but lost something essential in the process." "That's called grief," Claire said. "You're grieving your marriage, Marcus. Even though it ended badly, even though she hurt you, you're still losing something that mattered." "I don't want to grieve it," I said. "I want to be done with it. I want to be done with her." "That's not how it works." "Then how does it work?" She smiled sadly. "I don't know. I've never been married, but I think you have to let yourself feel it. The anger, the hurt, the loss, all of it. You can't engineer your way through emotion, Marcus. You can't solve grief like it's a structural problem." "Watch me," I said. But she was right, of course. Over the next few days, I tried to just push through, to treat my shattered marriage like another project that needed completion. I drafted divorce papers. I made lists of assets to divide. I calculated what a fair settlement would look like, accounting for my income and hers, for the house we'd bought together, for 15 years of shared life that now needed to be untangled and distributed like items from an estate sale. The problem was that every time I tried to be practical, tried to be rational, I'd remember something. The way Sarah used to steal my sweatshirts, her laugh when we watched bad movies together, the night I proposed, on the beach at sunset, so cliche and perfect that we'd laughed about it afterward. The early mornings when we'd lie in bed and plan our future, the house we'd buy, the trips we'd take, maybe kids someday if we were ready. We'd never been ready. We'd been too focused on careers, on building our individual successes, on becoming the kind of power couple that looked good in magazines but forgot how to actually talk to each other. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had made her invisible. That thought bothered me more than I wanted to admit. In week 3, my mother called. Not to check on me. She'd been doing that daily, maternal concern, wrapped in practical questions about whether I was eating vegetables and getting sleep. This call was different. "Marcus, I'm at the house." "Your house. Sarah called me." My stomach tightened. Why? Because she didn't know who else to call. "Marcus, you need to come here. Now." I drove to the house in 20 minutes, breaking probably 6 traffic laws, my mind spinning through possibilities. Was Sarah hurt? Had something happened? Had James come back, tried to... I found my mother sitting in the living room with Sarah, who looked worse than she had 3 weeks ago. Worse than I'd thought possible. She'd lost weight, her cheekbones sharp, her skin pale, dark circles under her eyes like bruises. "Marcus," she said when I walked in, standing up quickly, swaying slightly like standing required more energy than she had. "What's going on?" I asked, looking between her and my mother. "Mom, what—" "Tell him," my mother said to Sarah, her voice firm but not unkind. "Tell him what you told me." Sarah sat back down slowly, like her bones hurt. "I've been fired. The firm completed their investigation. Ethics violations, conflict of interest, misuse of client billing. They're recommending I be disbarred. The state bar is opening their own investigation." I waited for the satisfaction to hit, the vindication, the sense that justice had been served. It didn't come. I just felt tired. "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it, which surprised me. "James was fired too. His wife filed for divorce. Took the kids to her parents' place in Oregon. She swallowed hard. "He tried to kill himself 3 days ago. Pills. His brother found him in time." The room tilted slightly. I sat down in the chair across from her, my legs suddenly unreliable. Is he? He's alive. He's in a psychiatric facility. He's going to be okay, physically. But Marcus. She looked at me and her eyes were full of something I couldn't name. This is what we did. This is what our choices created, not just mine, ours, both of us. I cheated and that was wrong, but you destroyed us both, publicly, methodically. You took a private betrayal and turned it into a public execution. I was angry. Okay, I said, the words sounding hollow even to me. I know, you had every right to be angry, but Marcus, there's a difference between anger and vengeance, between protecting yourself and destroying someone else. You crossed that line. She's right, my mother said quietly. I've been thinking about this for 3 weeks, trying to understand why you did what you did. And I think you were so hurt, so humiliated that you wanted her to feel the same way. You wanted her to experience exactly what you'd experienced. But Marcus, revenge isn't balance. It's not justice. It's just more hurt piled on top of hurt until everyone's drowning in it. I looked at Sarah, at her wrecked face, at the physical manifestation of everything my choices had caused. I wanted you to understand, I said. I wanted you to know what it felt like to be humiliated, to have your trust destroyed, to watch something you built fall apart because of someone else's choices. I understand, she whispered. Trust me, Marcus. I understand. Do you? I asked, and there was no heat in it, just genuine curiosity. Do you understand what it was like to find those photos? To see you with him, happy, intimate, everything you used to be with me, but with someone else? Do you understand what it felt like to watch you check your phone during my moment and smile at his text? Do you understand how it felt to know you were planning to honor him, to celebrate him on what was supposed to be my night? No, she said. I don't. I don't think I can understand that, Marcus, because I've never loved anyone the way you loved me. I've never been that vulnerable, and that's one of the reasons I cheated. Because I didn't know how to be that open, that honest. I didn't know how to tell you I was unhappy because I knew it would hurt you, and I didn't want it to hurt you. So you cheated instead. So I cheated instead, she agreed, which hurt you worse, which destroyed us, which set off this chain reaction that's destroyed James too, and his family, and both our careers. I made a terrible choice, Marcus. But your response to that choice, it wasn't proportional. It was calculated to cause maximum damage. Yes, I said it was. We sat in silence, the three of us, in this house that had once been a home, that had witnessed our happiness and our slow destruction and now bore witness to this moment of terrible clarity. What do we do now? I asked finally. Where do we go from here? Sarah looked at my mother, then back at me. I'm going to sell the house, move back to Seattle, stay with my sister for a while, try to rebuild my life, maybe retrain for something else, since I probably won't be practicing law again. I don't know. I don't have a plan. For the first time in my life, I don't have a plan. And us? There is no us, Marcus. You made that very clear at the gala. And even if there was, I don't think I can be married to someone who could do what you did. Just like you can't be married to someone who could do what I did. We hurt each other too badly. We broke something that can't be fixed. She was right. I knew she was right. But hearing her say it, hearing the finality in her voice, made it real in a way that nothing else had. I'm sorry, I said, for all of it, for not seeing you, for making you feel invisible, for being so focused on my work that I forgot to focus on us, and for what I did at the gala, for the photos, for the board, for all of it. You hurt me, but I hurt you worse. I'm sorry. I'm sorry too, she said, and tears were running down her face now, silent and steady. For the affair, for lying to you, for all the ways I betrayed your trust, for making you think it was your fault, that you weren't enough. You were always enough, Marcus. I was just too broken to see it. My mother stood up. I'm going to make tea, she said, which was her solution to every crisis, every moment of overwhelming emotion. You two need to talk more. Without me here, I'll be in the kitchen. After she left, Sarah and I looked at each other across the space that had once held love and now held only wreckage. I never meant to destroy you, I said. I just wanted you to stop destroying me. I know, she said. And I never meant to betray you. I just wanted to feel something besides empty. Did it work? With James, did he make you feel less empty? She thought about it. For a while. And then it just made me emptier because I knew what I was losing. I knew what I was throwing away. And I couldn't stop. I couldn't figure out how to stop. You could have talked to me. I know, and I should have. That's my biggest regret, Marcus. Not that I had the affair, though I regret that too, but that I didn't come to you first. That I didn't give us the chance to fix things before they broke completely. Would it have mattered? If you'd come to me, told me you were unhappy, asked me to change, would I have done it? Or would I have just kept working, kept building my project, kept telling myself that providing for you was the same as loving you? I don't know, she said honestly. I want to believe you would have tried, but I don't know if trying would have been enough. Some things break, Marcus. Some structures fail, no matter how carefully they're designed. Maybe we were one of them. I thought about that, about structural failure, about how engineers studied collapsed bridges and fallen buildings to understand what went wrong, to prevent future catastrophes, about how we analyzed the cracks, the stress points, the moments where forces exceeded tolerance. Our marriage had exceeded its tolerance. We'd put too much weight on a foundation that wasn't strong enough, had ignored the warning signs until everything came crashing down. I don't know how to forgive you, I said. I don't know how to forgive myself. I don't think you have to, she said. I don't think forgiveness is always possible. Sometimes you just have to accept what happened and try to learn from it. Try to be better next time. Will there be a next time? For you? I don't know. Right now, I can't imagine trusting anyone enough to try again. Can you? I thought about it, about whether I could ever open myself up like that again, ever be that vulnerable, ever build my life around someone else's presence in it. No, I said, I don't think so. Then we did this to each other, she said. We broke each other's ability to love. That's almost worse than the affair, than the gala. We destroyed something bigger than our marriage. We destroyed our faith and connection. We sat there as the afternoon light faded on, as my mother made tea in the kitchen, as the house settled around us like something dying peacefully. I'm going to go, Sarah said finally. I'll have my lawyer send the divorce papers. We can split everything fairly. I'm not going to fight you, Marcus. I don't have the energy, and you've already won. It doesn't feel like winning, I said. No, she agreed, and it doesn't. She stood up, gathered her coat, walked to the door. Then she turned back. For what it's worth, she said, you deserve that award. The Riverwalk project, it really is brilliant. You changed the city, Marcus. You built something that will last long after all this pain fades. I hope that brings you some comfort. It doesn't, I said, not anymore. She nodded like she understood, then left. My mother came out of the kitchen with tea. Neither of us would drink and sat beside me on the couch. That was hard to watch, she said. That was hard to live, I replied. What are you going to do now? I don't know, Mom. I honest to God don't know. She put her arm around me, and I let myself lean into her. Let myself be a child again for just a moment. Someone who could be comforted by a mother's presence. Someone who didn't have to have all the answers. You're going to hurt for a while, she said. You're going to regret things. You're going to question every choice you made. But eventually, Marcus, you're going to wake up one morning and it won't hurt quite as much. And then another morning when it hurts even less. And slowly, day by day, you're going to rebuild yourself. Not the person you were before Sarah. Not the person you became during the marriage. Someone new. Someone who learned from all this. What if I don't want to be someone new? What if I just want to be myself again? That person is gone, baby. He ended when you showed those photos at the gala, when you chose revenge over healing. You can't go back to him. You can only move forward to whoever comes next. I closed my eyes and tried to see that person, that future version of Marcus Chen who'd survived this and emerged somehow wiser, somehow better. I couldn't see him yet. All I could see was wreckage. But maybe that was okay. Maybe you had to clear away the wreckage before you could build something new. I was an engineer, after all. I knew how to build. I just had to remember how to build myself. 6 months later, I stood on a beach in Carmel, watching the sun set over the Pacific, painting the sky in colors that had no names. The sand was cold under my bare feet, the wind sharp with salt and the promise of winter, and I was alone in a way that no longer felt like punishment. I'd learned to be alone in these months. Not lonely, there was a difference I'd discovered, but alone. Present in my own company. Comfortable with silence, able to sit with my thoughts without immediately trying to solve them, organize them, engineer them into something manageable. Therapy had helped. Dr. Martinez, no relation to Claire, though they shared a dry sense of humor, had spent 3 months helping me understand why I'd done what I did at the gala. Not to excuse it, not to justify it, just to understand it. You felt powerless, she'd said in one session. Your wife was having an affair. She was planning to honor her lover publicly, and you couldn't control any of it. So you took back control the only way you knew how. With data, with evidence, with a plan. You engineered a solution to an emotional problem. And it worked in the sense that it gave you back your power. But it didn't solve the actual problem, which was that you were hurting and didn't know how to process that hurt in a healthy way. So I'm supposed to just accept being hurt? I'd asked. Just let people betray me and do nothing? No, you're supposed to protect yourself. Set boundaries. Remove yourself from harmful situations. But there's a difference between protection and destruction, Marcus. You didn't just protect yourself. You destroyed Sarah's career, her reputation, her future. That wasn't protection. That was vengeance. She deserved it. Maybe. Maybe not. But did you deserve to become the kind of person who takes vengeance? Did you deserve to carry that weight, that knowledge that you deliberately hurt someone you once loved? That's the question you need to answer. I'd been answering it slowly, painfully over these 6 months, and the answer was no. I didn't deserve that weight. I didn't want to be that person. The brilliant engineer who'd solved the problem of his wife's betrayal by turning her life into a cautionary tale. The divorce had been finalized in month 4. Sarah had moved to Seattle, was working as a paralegal while she figured out her next steps. We'd spoken twice since that day at the house. Once to sign papers, once when she called to tell me that James Whitmore had checked himself out of the psychiatric facility and was rebuilding his life, slowly, painfully, one day at a time. I'm glad he's okay, I'd said, and meant it. So am I, she'd replied. Marcus, I want you to know I don't hate you, and I did for a while, but I don't anymore. What you did at the gala, it was terrible. But what I did to you, that was terrible too. We hurt each other, we broke each other, and now we're both trying to heal. I hope you find peace. You too, I'd said. I hadn't heard from her since. The firm was doing well, better than well, actually. The gala incident had brought a strange kind of publicity. The brilliant engineer who exposed his wife's affair through PowerPoint had become a meme, a cautionary tale, a case study in public humiliation. Projects had tripled. Everyone wanted to work with Marcus Chen, the man who could solve any problem, who could turn disaster into data. I hated it. I hated being known for that night, for that moment of calculated cruelty. I hated that my professional identity was now tied to my personal catastrophe. I hated that people looked at me with a mix of admiration and fear, like I was someone capable of anything if pushed hard enough. So I was making changes. I'd promoted David to managing partner, letting him handle the business side, while I focused on design work, on the projects that had made me fall in love with engineering in the first place. I'd taken a pay cut, downsized to a smaller apartment, simplified my life in ways that would have seemed unthinkable a year ago. And I'd started teaching. One class, twice a week, at the university where I'd earned my master's degree. Introduction to Structural Engineering. I taught them about load-bearing calculations and stress analysis and sustainable design principles. But I also taught them about integrity, about building things that lasted, about the importance of creating structures that could withstand pressure without collapsing. I never mentioned the gala. I never talked about my personal life. But I tried to model something different than what I'd become that night. Tried to show them that engineering was about more than just solving problems. It was about understanding systems, about recognizing that every action had consequences, about building with care because what you created would outlast you. Some of them got it. Some of them just wanted to pass the class. But I kept teaching, kept trying, kept hoping that I could shape something better than what I'd become. The beach was nearly empty now. Just a few distant figures, walking dogs, taking photos of the sunset, existing in that peaceful evening space between day and night. I'd come here on impulse, needing to get out of the city, needing to breathe air that didn't taste like ambition and regret. My phone buzzed. A text from Claire. How's the beach? Have you achieved enlightenment yet? I smiled and texted back, working on it. May take another 6 months. Take all the time you need. The firm is fine. You are fine. Stop punishing yourself. Was I punishing myself? Maybe, probably. I'd left the life I'd built, the corner office, the prestigious projects, the social circle that had once defined me, and rebuilt something smaller, simpler, more honest. Dr. Martinez said it was healthy. Claire worried I was running away. David thought I was having a midlife crisis at 38, and maybe they were all right. A woman approached from down the beach, walking slowly, her face turned toward the sunset. As she got closer, I felt something in my chest tighten, recognizing something in her posture, her walk, before I could see her face clearly. It wasn't Sarah. Of course it wasn't Sarah. She was in Seattle, rebuilding her life, as far from me as she could reasonably get. But for a moment, in the fading light, I thought the woman passed by with a polite smile, and I realized what I'd been feeling. Not hope, not regret, just a phantom pain like an amputated limb that still ached sometimes. I would always carry Sarah with me, I realized. Not the way I'd carried her during our marriage, as a partner, a companion, a shared identity, but as a scar, a lesson, a permanent reminder of what I was capable of, both in love and in vengeance. That was the price of the gala. Not just the destruction of my marriage, but the knowledge that I was capable of destroying something I'd once cherished. That I could choose cruelty over compassion, revenge over healing, vindication over peace. I would spend the rest of my life making sure I never made that choice again. The sun touched the horizon, setting the ocean on fire, turning the world into something ancient and beautiful and utterly indifferent to human drama. Somewhere out there, Sarah was watching her own sunset, carrying her own scars, learning her own lessons. Somewhere, James Whitmore was rebuilding his life, one careful step at a time. Somewhere, 100 people who'd been at the gala were telling the story of what they'd witnessed, turning our private catastrophe into public entertainment. And here I was, standing alone on a beach, trying to figure out who Marcus Chen was supposed to be now that he wasn't a husband, wasn't a victim, wasn't an engineer solving the problem of betrayal through public humiliation. My phone buzzed again. David this time. Stop thinking so hard. Just be. You're allowed to just be. I typed back, I'm trying, I'm learning. Because that was the truth. I was learning to be present without planning, to feel emotions without immediately trying to solve them, to sit with uncertainty instead of engineering certainty, to accept that some questions didn't have answers, some problems didn't have solutions, some structures were meant to collapse, so something better could be built in their place. I was learning to be human again. It was harder than any project I'd ever completed. Harder than the Riverwalk, harder than the Thompson Tower, harder than anything I'd ever engineered. Because engineering had rules, had principles, had clear relationships between cause and effect. But being human, being fully, honestly human, that was chaos. That was uncertainties. That was living without a blueprint and hoping you didn't cause too much damage along the way. The sunset faded to twilight, and I started walking back toward my car, my bare feet leaving prints in the sand that the tide would wash away before morning. Temporary marks, ephemeral evidence of my presence, gone before anyone could study them, analyze them, turn them into data. Maybe that was okay. Maybe not everything needed to be permanent. Maybe not everything needed to be documented, preserved, turned into lessons for future generations. Maybe some things were allowed to just exist briefly before fading into memory and eventually into nothing at all. I drove back to the city as night fell, as stars appeared in the gaps between fog, as the highway stretched out before me like a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. Tomorrow I'd teach my class. Tomorrow I'd work on designs for a community center in Oakland. Tomorrow I'd have coffee with David and probably argue about whether I should take on the Singapore project he kept pushing. Tomorrow I'd keep building. Not the life I'd had before, not the marriage I'd lost, not the person I'd been when I stood on that stage at the gala and chose destruction over healing. Something new, something uncertain, something that scared me in the best possible way. Because that was the thing about structural failure, about collapse and catastrophe and disaster. The rubble didn't have to stay rubble. The destruction didn't have to be permanent. You could always clear away the wreckage and build again. You just had to be brave enough to start. And maybe eventually you could build something better than what you'd lost. Something honest. Something that didn't require revenge or vindication or the destruction of others to prove its worth. Maybe you could just build something that stood on its own, solid and true, without needing to tear anything else down. I was still learning how to do that. But for the first time in 6 months, I believed it might be possible. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, unexpected and unsolicited, from an address I hadn't seen in 3 years but recognized immediately. Marcus, I hope it's okay that I'm writing to you. I've drafted this email 100 times and deleted it just as many. But I saw an article about your work on the Mumbai project, and I wanted to reach out. First, congratulations. What you're doing, building sustainable infrastructure and developing cities, training local engineers, creating systems that will outlast us all. It's incredible. It's exactly the kind of work you always dreamed about doing, back when we were young and thought we could change the world. I'm writing because I owe you something I never gave you, a real apology. Not the kind I gave you at the house, when I was still defensive, still hurt, still trying to distribute blame equally, but a real acknowledgement that what I did to you, the affair, the lies, the betrayal of your trust, that was my choice, my failing, my responsibility. You didn't make me cheat. I chose to cheat, and I'm sorry. I'm also writing to say thank you. That sounds insane, I know. Thank you for exposing my affair at a public event. Thank you for destroying my career. But Marcus, what you did at the gala, as terrible as it was, as much as it hurt, it was also the catalyst I needed. It forced me to look at who I'd become, what I'd been doing, the ways I'd been lying to myself and everyone around me. It forced me to rebuild from nothing, to figure out who Sarah Chen was without the armor of professional success, without the comfortable lie of a good marriage, without any of the external validation I'd been using to avoid doing actual internal work. I've been in therapy for 3 years. I finished a master's in social work last month. I work with people going through divorce, helping them navigate the legal system, connecting them with resources. I make about a quarter of what I used to make, and I'm happier than I've ever been. I'm dating someone, slowly, carefully, honestly. I'm learning to be vulnerable without being reckless, learning the difference between intimacy and escape. I'm learning to be a better person than I was when I knew you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for reconciliation. I just wanted you to know that your revenge, because that's what it was, we both know that, didn't just destroy me. It also rebuilt me, and I think maybe it rebuilt you too. I see it in the interviews you give, the way you talk about integrity and sustainable systems and building things that consider their impact on everyone involved. I see it in the projects you choose, the way you've shifted from prestigious to purposeful. We hurt each other, Marcus. We broke each other, but we also accidentally, in the worst possible way, taught each other how to heal. I hope you're well. I hope you're happy. I hope you've found the peace we couldn't give each other. With gratitude and regret, Sarah. I read the email 3 times, sitting in my office in the community center in East Oakland, surrounded by blueprints for the Mumbai project and sketches for a proposed school renovation in Detroit. My coffee grew cold. Outside, I could hear the laughter of kids in the after-school program, the sound of life continuing, building, growing. I thought about responding and thought about what I might say, thought about whether there was anything left to say after 3 years of silence, of separate healing, of parallel lives that would probably never intersect again. In the end, I wrote back, Sarah, thank you for writing. I'm glad you're doing well. I'm glad you found work that matters. I'm glad you're building a life that's honest. You're right, what happened at the gala, it wasn't just about you. It was about me choosing vengeance over healing. It was about me trying to solve an emotional problem through engineering principles, trying to balance the equation of hurt by hurting you back. It worked in the sense that it gave me control. It failed in the sense that it made me into someone I didn't want to be. I've been rebuilding too. Different projects, different priorities, different understanding of what it means to build something that lasts. I teach now, in addition to the infrastructure work. I try to help young engineers understand that every structure they design will affect real people, real lives. That engineering isn't just about solving problems, it's about understanding the human cost of our solutions. I don't know if I've forgiven you, I don't know if you've forgiven me, but I think maybe we've both forgiven ourselves. And maybe that's enough. I hope you keep doing the work you're doing. I hope your happiness continues. I hope the person you're dating knows how lucky they are. And Sarah, I'm sorry too. For the gala, for the way I chose to hurt you, for not being brave enough to just walk away with my dignity intact instead of needing to destroy yours. We were terrible to each other, but we're learning to be better. That's worth something. Take care, Marcus. I sent the email before I could second guess myself, then turned back to the blueprints on my desk. The Mumbai project was challenging, trying to create sustainable infrastructure in a city of 20 million people with limited resources and complex political dynamics. But that was the kind of work I lived for now. Not prestige, not awards, just the quiet satisfaction of building something that would help people, that would last, that would make the world marginally better than I found it. That evening, I had coffee with someone I'd been seeing for 6 months. Her name was Priya. She was a professor of environmental science, and she knew about Sarah, knew about the gala, knew the worst parts of my history, and chose to be there anyway. "You're quiet tonight," she observed, studying my face over her latte. "Everything okay?" "Sarah emailed me," I said. "First time in 3 years. How do you feel about that?" I thought about it. Okay, actually, like maybe enough time has passed that we can acknowledge what happened without it destroying us all over again. "That's growth," she said, smiling. "You not being destroyed by your ex-wife's email. 6 months ago, that would have sent you spiraling." She was right. 6 months ago, I would have obsessed over every word, would have analyzed and reanalyzed her motives, would have turned it into a problem that needed solving. Now, I just let it be what it was. Two people acknowledging shared history, shared hurt, shared humanity. And I'm trying, I said, to be better, to be someone who doesn't need revenge to feel powerful. "You're succeeding," she said, reaching across the table to take my hand. "You know that, right? You're already that person. You've been that person for a while now. You just forget sometimes." I looked at this woman who'd chosen to love me despite my history, despite my damage, despite knowing exactly what I was capable of when hurt. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the naive hope of my youth, but something harder earned, more resilient. Hope built on failure, on lessons learned, on the knowledge that I've been terrible and survived it and become better because of it. "Thank you," I said, "for being patient with me, for not giving up when I'm difficult." "You're worth it," she said simply. "Besides, I'm difficult too. We're a matched set." That night, lying in bed after she'd gone home, I thought about the gala, about that moment on stage when I'd chosen to reveal Sarah's affair, when I'd opted for public destruction over private dignity. And I could see it so clearly now, see the fear underneath the anger, see the hurt driving the need to hurt back, see the engineering mindset trying to solve an emotional problem through data and evidence and calculated exposure. It had been the wrong choice. Dr. Martinez had been right. My mother had been right. Everyone who'd looked at me with concern and disappointment had been right. But it had also been human. Flawed, messy, destructive, but human. And maybe that was the lesson I'd needed to learn. That I wasn't just an engineer, wasn't just a problem solver, wasn't just someone who could calculate the right answer if given enough information. I was human, capable of love and hate, creation and destruction, brilliance and terrible, catastrophic failure. The trick was choosing which of those capabilities to nurture, which to build with, which to let guide my hands as I shaped the world around me. I'd chosen destruction once. I wouldn't choose it again. Instead, I'd keep building, keep teaching, keep learning to be present, to be honest, to be vulnerable without being reckless. Keep trying to create structures, physical and emotional, that could withstand pressure without collapsing. Keep trying to be worthy of the second chance I'd been given, and it wasn't much. It wasn't the triumphant ending I might have engineered if I could have designed my life from scratch. But it was real. It was honest. It was mine. And for the first time in 4 years, that was enough.